Welcome to this week's installment of Reading with Robin, your number one destination since 2002 for insightful author interviews and discussions on everything literary. And with no further introduction, your host, Robin Call.
Storytelling with love, compassion, honesty, reflection, and humor, not an easy task. Wild Game, My Mother, Her Lover, and Me by Adrienne Brodeur is just out, and I'm telling this audience, do not miss this book. Adrienne's publishing career began with founding the fiction magazine Zoetrope, All Story, with filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola, where she served as editor-in-chief from 1996 to 2002, then became an editor at Harcourt, now HMH, where she acquired and edited literary fiction and memoir. Adrienne left publishing in 2013 to become creative director and later executive director of Aspen Words, a literary arts nonprofit and program of the Aspen Institute. There's so much to talk about. I don't know where to start. We'll be with your book, of course. Adrienne splits her time between Cambridge and Cape Cod, where she lives with her husband and children. Welcome to Reading with Robin, Adrienne.
Robin, thank you for having me. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
My pleasure. I read this book. I was telling Adrienne off air that her fabulous publicist, Taryn, sent it to us many months ago. She knew we would love it, my daughter and I, and we did. And I should say we're thrilled to be hosting Adrienne November, the Cardigan Connection. Okay, so November is the 19th. It's always third Tuesday, so it's the only thing I ever know about the calendar is when a third Tuesday is. So we will be hosting Adrienne here in Providence, Rhode Island on Tuesday, November 19th. For more information, go to her website, adriennebrodeur.com. And, oh, my God, are you busy?
Yes, I am.
That is an amazing schedule, and there's Miami Book Festivals on there, and Boston, Texas. I see you're with Courtney Sullivan, who I love, and has a blurb on the cover, and Danny Shapiro. That I can only imagine is like mind-blowing, the two of you there together. And just congratulations on what is a book I will never forget, and read in this, I think it was the spring, reread it so it would be fresh, and I was shaking turning the pages, like knowing what was happening, but also, because I just knew what was happening, and I was so excited to keep reading. It's just a book
to just, so much.
It's just gorgeous. There's so many things about this book that I loved. I barely know where to start, but I guess you start at the beginning, and you talk in the beginning in the prologue, and it says, you say, deception takes commitment. And I feel like that should be stitched onto a pillow.
Yeah, I mean, secrets and keeping them is very hard work. It's very diligent work. And I really think what I learned over time is that also keeping secrets keeps you from being known, and it keeps you from having happy, intimate relationships, whether that's friendship or, romantic or anything else, because you're always holding something back.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a sense of being judged. And I always feel like with secrets, there's this, if you could sort of met them out, so that the person that's receiving them understands the background so as not to feel so judged, which is a reason to hold on to one. It's like once it's out there, it becomes everybody's in a way. So,
right.
And you're keeping your mother's secret, which as a 14-year-old, you are entrusted with this secret, which is incredible. You have children now, so you're writing this from this perspective, looking back. And the idea of being trusted with the secret is so heady, and there's a thrill, risk, there's all this to be in someone's confidence, and you're a child. So I guess let's start with the secret.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was, so would you like me to say the secret?
I guess, what's really tricky, when we talk about fiction, certainly I always say, Reading with Robin alert, no spoilers. But when it's a memoir, there are certain things that are out there, and there's so much being written about this book,
right,
and will be written about this book. So,
no, absolutely,
it's your story to tell. I mean, like every page is a delicious bite. So I don't know, what you want to give away there, but I guess you do kind of have to start with that. It's in the title.
I think we can start with the secret, which is that in 1980, on a very hot July night when I was 14 years old, my mother came into my bedroom and woke me up to basically tell me that my stepfather's best friend had kissed her. And so what I didn't know in that moment was that she was about to embark in this, epic love affair that would go on for a dozen years. But I did realize almost immediately, like in those moments, that my life had changed because really, simply put, I'd sort of gone to bed as her daughter and I'd woken up as her best friend. I'd just become it overnight. And, having the secret, as you said, it was such a heady, exciting moment at that age in my life because you're so in your mother's thrall, and my mother was very charismatic and fabulous, and I always, like all kids, you want your mother's love and attention, and I suddenly got it in a very big way. So it was incredibly exciting, although, obviously what you figure out over time is that, sharing a secret like that, it might create, it creates almost a false intimacy because, in fact, she's sharing a burden. She's transferring, she sort of transferred a burden to the psyche of another person. And I shared it for years. And even though, I've spent years unraveling it and writing this memoir, helped a great deal, it very much shaped the lens with which I view the world.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of imagine that. And to start with, people that have had experience with extreme narcissism in their lives will understand it differently. There's probably the sense of somebody saying, well, how could that happen? I can imagine how it can happen. Not my mother, my father, just sharing really inappropriate things. That's a sidebar. So I totally can understand, in a different way. I get it. I'm sure there are people that would read it and say, well, that's, thing is, you're not taught, parents don't come with tags. You have been given this kind of parent, so expect these things. It's what you think is normal. And
right.
So,
you only get one set of parents and you only get one childhood, and you absolutely think it's normal.
Right.
I had no idea it was unusual until later.
And the idea of also your brother, who is just a little older than you, was left out of this. So then how that translates to your relationship and where he was
Absolutely.
at his age. Yeah, you describe him as like this sunny boy out on his skiff. And another thing that I love about the book is the setting. It's very summery and taking place in New England, on the Cape, and in all of these locations that, as a New Englander, oh my goodness, I'm from Long Island. I just said I was a New Englander.
You can be a New Englander.
I am. It's 35 years. I'm a New Englander. And so that is all. You could sort of smell the ocean, and all of the senses are part of this book. So what happens, and you say, I even, I always read I read the whole thing, and that would be his story to tell. But as as in the mind of a 14 or 15-year-old, what does that feel like with your sibling?
With my brother? Well, what I will say about my brother is that, we had this incredibly complicated childhood. This was not obviously the only secret that was kept, but there were secrets kept in our childhood, which is not an entirely healthy environment, and it doesn't breed trust and closeness. So We've always had a difficult, or a complicated, I should say, relationship.
Sure.
What I think is important now is that we've both, managed to kind of grow up, go on, have successful careers in our respective fields. We're both married to really emotionally capable people, and we have children who happen to be really dear friends. So I feel so grateful for that in all of it.
That is so awesome. And there's so many people that we read about, and I'm on the phone with Adrienne Brodeur, her brand new book, Wild Game, which is the best title. And when you read this book, you will know why on so many levels. My mother, her lover, and me. It comes out on your birthday.
It does.
Happy birthday. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I was like, well, that's just the whole thing. It just feels so meaningful. And it's not even my book, but like I feel it for you in reading it.
Oh,
And
that's so kind.
Oh, you're welcome. The love of literary life and building that kind of world, all culminating in this incredible memoir that I can only imagine will go on to spur so many conversations. And really, there's so many things I have written all over this book, which I think my daughter and I were sharing this, Gally, so I might be in some kind of trouble when she returns because it's all folded back and annotated, and there's more in here than I could possibly cover in one interview because there were so many pearls just all over the place. And there are no pearls, but talk about the necklace in this book as a physical thing and I suppose as a metaphor.
Right. Well, the necklace it's kind of got a big backstory, but my mother had a very complicated, far more complicated than my own childhood, in which her parents were married and divorced twice to each other before she was a teenager. And she remembers the second marriage proposal as a young girl when her father gave her mother this extraordinary necklace. Her father spent much of his life in India, and he bought this beautiful Raj-era necklace that was just bedecked with precious stones and diamonds and rubies and all the rest. And it was a very dramatic proposal, and my mother must have been under 10 years old at the time. And she fixated on this necklace, which went on to take on sort of an epic quality, a mythical quality for her. And she fantasized she was someone who really blurred love and money, and so she fantasized that the necklace was just unbelievably, incalculably valuable and unappraisable. And so my whole childhood, after her parents divorced, her mother gave it to her. And for my whole childhood, my mother would always say, you can, if you're very good, someday you'll get this necklace. But really, she would almost always imply that it was too good for me. It was too good for anyone. It should be in a museum. Uh-huh. And it really went on to symbolize this this very sad quality of my mother, which is to value things more than people on some level. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's just been I've never worn the necklace. It is in my possession at this point in time. And I see it as a symbol of everything that I don't want to be, that I don't ever want this possession to be more important than, the people I love.
And that's like one of the huge takeaways, certainly, and in breaking that chain with your own family. And
right.
We're doomed to repeat or make a change, and you can see how deeply rooted those characteristics or the pathology is in a family. But I was wondering if you were going to wear it on tour. I guess the answer is no.
The necklace has kind of bad juju for me.
No, I was thinking no, I know. But I was like, it was in some of the writing, the online stuff I was reading.
Sure.
So, of course, no, I understand that. But it's so present in the book. I was thinking in some way, is it going to maybe like
It's an idea. I got to say, I don't feel like I have the gravitas to wear this necklace. You need to be in evening gown, walking on a red carpet.
I would imagine like they could make a replica of it in a pin. Is it too late at HMH to make something?
I'm leaving on Saturday, so
I know, really, they need to crash the jewelry. Well, I just think it is, it comes up again and again, and also your mother's amazing ability to cook. Like, it's, as a vegetarian, I will say.
Sorry about that. That must have been hard to read.
Well, I had to look stuff up, Adrienne. I was like, what are they cooking now? But even though, as a vegetarian, these things, I am always so impressed with the passion that people have for whatever it is they do, even if it's not something that is appealing to me. The garlic, the mincing of the garlic and the butter and the wafting of the smells and just the theater production of the cooking, I was entranced by. The actual eating of there were a lot of things in there that sounded awesome. But when Ben first arrives with this prize for your mother to cook, serve, whatever, like it was a little foreign to me. But talk about what it was like growing up with that kind of food preparation and how that translates to what you prepare for your own family.
Right. Well, I don't prepare a whole lot of wild game, for sure. Although we do love, when we're on Cape Cod, we go clamming and fishing, and we love hunter-gathering of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say my mother was magic in the kitchen. She was extraordinary, and she studied at Le Cordon Bleu, and she'd been in the test kitchen of Time Life, and she wrote cookbooks my entire growing up. So there was always something on the back burner braising. The kitchen always smelled fabulous. She would also, it wasn't always not children-friendly. I mean, a lot of it wasn't child-friendly, but, you know, I really remember one year where she was just perfecting, it might have been my favorite year, her donut recipe, and virtually every Saturday morning, the fryer would be out and the cinnamon sugar. But no, I mean, I think how that has gone on, and her mother was a wonderful cook, and I really enjoy cooking. I love to cook. I'm not quite at her level, but I do enjoy it a lot. And I take, you know, I think some people come home and it's a huge chore. Like to me, cleaning would be a huge chore, or laundry, but that's very calming, chopping things, getting things together, putting out a beautiful meal for my family. I mean, I actually just feel great about serving healthy and beautiful food and having my children eat it. And it feels so immediate in this world that is, for the most part, you know, everything's wrapped in cellophane. So I love to cook.
I like that. Yeah, it's so extraordinary to read those passages. And I'm on the phone. We're talking Wild Game, My Mother, Her Lover, and Me. Adrienne Brodeur's book is going to be and is everywhere. It's just out now. And you can find her at her website, and from there go to Instagram. Are you on Twitter? Facebook?
Not very much. Twitter,
well, you're not
Facebook
missing anything.
And Instagram, yes.
Find her on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, Twitter is just a suckhole. I don't know. And also, the other thing, I'm always marketing. I can just imagine this book coming with a power pack. Now, that's something else I had to look up. And all of the drinking and the cocktailry and the glassware, barware, just so, like you could just hear the ice, the pouring of the liquid over the clinking of the ice. It's just a lot of sensory description with this book, along with the sense, you know, just every sense was engaged while reading this book, which is why I loved it so much. What is this power pack you speak of? I didn't know what this is a real thing.
Is really just was my mother's affectionate term.
Oh, was her term. Okay.
Essentially a dry Manhattan, and it is an incredibly powerful drink. It's just bourbon and a little bit of vermouth and a few other things thrown in, but she loved them. And she, you know, she grew up in a different era, but, you know, it was sort of the martini lunch era and everything else. But, I mean, she drank a few cocktails before lots of wine pretty much every day of her life.
Yeah, I thought it was a real thing, and I'm like, okay, I wasn't coming up with anything, but I love that. That was great. Well, and it was mentioned many times, so I thought, okay, I'm missing something, but I got the idea of it, but I wanted to know more about this power pack, and it's just fascinating.
I'm a little worried that everyone's going to be trying to serve them to me on the tour.
You probably are right. If they read closely, you may get all sorts of roadkill and drinks. And I think that when people, and certainly on Reading with Robin, and I've been doing this for many years, when you get just so into a book and then everybody picks out different things that speak to them, you never know. But I can imagine on tour, and go to Adrienne's website for all of her tour visits, that you're going to be hearing people's stories and more that are familiar than people, you know, than somebody might think. When people start telling stories and really thinking about their own lives, especially when reading a memoir, it's really kind of magical. You don't know who will go on to, you know, consider their own lives, or where, you know, make a change or share a story, or, you know, all of these things. And has that happened yet?
I've really been enjoying that. I mean, almost from the time I met with the editors who were in the auction, because, of course, you think you're writing these very singular and unique story, and obviously not everyone has a mother who, you know, got you involved with her love affair. But I think in a lot of ways what's universal about it is the power that our parents have over us, and how much we love them and want to please them, and the fact that it needs to be it's a power that needs to be wielded really carefully and gently and compassionately.
Yes, and that's something when it's, when things are sort of taken out of context, or the power, I don't even know if it's conscious or it is conscious, depending on the effects where they go on. You never know what's going on in someone's head. Like, I don't know if you've ever done this with your children, but like had the desire to like open up their little brains and rework the story
every day
where they're supposed to be, right? And sort of close them back in when they're just so they have all the information. Another line from Hamilton about who lives, who dies, who tells your story is one that runs through my head all of the time. And I think that these, if you're a thinker and always sort of trying to process why things are, I read in the book where you meet, again, not giving anything away, but when you meet somebody in your life who says they're like, it was a great childhood or nothing, and you wonder, like, what are you not telling me, or what have you not looked at, or what else is in there? Like, how could everything be? Like, what is the perfect childhood?
Right.
Right? I remember having this conversation with my husband 30 years ago and saying, well, something. Give me something.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying that myself.
Everything is great. Everything is wonderful. It's a fascinating thing, the way people get along, and what as the stories come out, you can almost process them and think, well, that must have been an issue. Oh no, it was part of the perfect childhood. So I think that's interesting. Your love of books, too. Talk about your stepmother. I loved all these parts where she talks about how important books are and the books that she shared with you.
She was amazing. She owned an independent bookstore in California, and just from the very moment I met her, she and my dad got together when I was in my early 20s, and she would just start pressing these beautiful novels into my hands. And oddly, given that I had two very literary parents, my father was a New Yorker writer and my mother was a food and travel writer, I was not a huge reader as a child. I wasn't one of these kids under the blanket with their flashlight. But Margot in the book, Margot just awakened the reader in me. And it also came at a time in my life when I was in so much trouble, sort of, dealing with all the repercussions that had taken part as with my involvement in this affair. And I kind of cornered myself and gotten myself into a corner, and somehow reading these books, we're all trapped in the bubble of our own experience, and you'd read a book, a novel or a memoir about someone else's life, and it's such an empathetic act to read because you're in a character's head and you're seeing how they are navigating the world and getting out of their own predicaments. And I just found it, all of a sudden I wanted to stop doing everything but reading, and I've read sort of feverishly ever since, and that's been 30 years.
I just loved reading that, and then it all comes full circle with this book, Wild Game, that you have, that people will be reading and doing the same. Like, that's chilling. That just gives me chills. Margot says here, books come into your life for a reason, and I love that. And then you talk about these 3x5 cards, and you just write everything down about these books. Do you still have these cards, and are you going to do something with them?
I do still have these cards. I'm actually looking at the little wooden card catalog, this old-fashioned card catalog. I don't keep writing them anymore. I mean, that was something I did for about 10 years. But I do still have them because, of course, I can never get rid of them now.
Of course not. No, never.
But I don't have plans for them at this point in my life.
Not yet. I imagine something with those. I just love the idea of that box and which books that that were so important to you, and especially when reading a book. It's really neat when other books are mentioned, and then it becomes sort of an addendum. And it made me want to reread things. Or you mentioned a few books where I'm like, well, there's a hole in my literary canon. I did not read that book. And also talk about your friends or people that were important to you. Your friend, is it Kira?
Yes. Well, there were, I think if there were three things that saved me, because I did hit a very significant depression, the one and only of my life in my 20s, when I, had boxed myself in, as I said, there were sort of a few ways that I dug my way out and kind of, tried to find my way back into the light, for lack of a better way of putting it. And one was through literature. And obviously there was therapy too. But
sure.
Another really powerful one was just friendship, mostly female friendship. But when I realized that I didn't have to deny this story, when I didn't have to keep tamping down this secret, because we all know when you keep a secret in the dark,
it's
it
coming
just
out
grows.
somewhere.
And
Right.
It is. And so when I finally realized that, if I actually shined a spotlight on it, I could move past it in a way that I couldn't if I kept it hidden. And really so much of that happened through these friendships. And Kira was someone I met at a young age. I was in my late teens, waitressing on Cape Cod, and we sort of each went our own way to college, but we were always in touch. And then we resurfaced together in New York, and she had a career in illustration and design in the arts, and obviously I did in literature, and we remain dear friends to this day.
It's nothing like those friendships. I love this line where she says, "Don't listen to the voices at night. They act like they have answers, but they don't know what they're talking about." I just loved that, because those voices, they are there. And this I think this book just will open up so many discussions about so many of these topics. And secrets are, they're at the heart of most of the books that we just love to read. Those are the, what's the secret? What are we going to find out? What is somebody hiding? And then all of the energy expended taking care of that. And that's, what you talk about here. And just all the love and humor in this book. And what was that experience like, just going through? It's got such a great pace. And so certainly, and there's a disclaimer at the front at the beginning of the book about, names being changed and taking time, which I think is fascinating, to distill a certain amount of time to keep the pace of a book, which is why it's unputdownable. What was it like doing that? You're welcome.
You mean figuring out the sort of structure and how I wanted to tell it?
Yeah, and like how to distill such a large amount of time maybe down to a shorter piece, because it keeps the...
I think what I kept telling myself, because, it's not autobiography, right? It's memoir. It's about these events of your life and the consciousness about those events. And it was above all about my mother and me. So when I found myself writing chapters, sort of tangential chapters about this friend or that lover or this, relative or that, I just is this about my mom and me? Is this about this central force that was the lie? And how we recovered from it, or how, and I think throughout the whole time, I think my mind tends to be sort of going from scene to scene. So I knew from the very beginning of writing, I knew where I was going to start. I didn't know where I was going to end, but I knew I was going to start from the night of the kiss. And then I knew the big beats, sort of these moments that sort of demonstrated the toll this took on me, and how we got from, the kiss to the nightly constitutionals where I was complicit to the coming up with the wild game cookbook proposal to keep these two couples,
that
together.
Was amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But so I had all these beats that I knew, and so sometimes it was sort of just figuring out the connective tissues, and I'd look at my journals to sort of figure where I was emotionally and so on. And other things did come up, but, you have to figure out what you're writing about. Otherwise it would be 1,000. I mean, any of our lives, a day could take, 30 pages, right? I mean, honestly.
This is true. So you're keeping to what the central part of the story was, and giving the reader the connection in between these bigger pieces of these bigger parts of the story, and then the people in your story, in your life, that you're sharing, and how they all connect. Did you ever do like one of those, Tim Russert white erase boards with like the family tree and all the places?
No, but I do need something for my family tree. It's like an Escher drawing, right, with all these tabs and steps and so on. It's very, very confusing. Yeah, no, I didn't do that, but that might not be a bad idea.
Bring that along on your tour. Yeah, you can drop the necklace idea, pick that one up, and maybe the barware is still not a bad idea. And I am just thrilled for this book to be out in the world and to share it with everybody again. I think, Taryn, I don't remember, it was so long ago. And we are thrilled to be hosting you November 19th here at the Cardigan Connection. And for more information, visit Adrienne's website at adriennebrodeur.com for all of her many events. And I look forward to seeing you soonest, I guess, at Brooklyn Book Festival. And enjoy this just gorgeous book, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Robin. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's installment of the Reading with Robin podcast. As always, our full-length podcasts will be available right here on robincall.com. We appreciate your support and look forward to having you over next week when we chat with our next featured guest. Have a great week and happy reading.